My name is Nathan. I'm 20 years old, finishing my second year in the literature program. I'm not a top student, but I'm not failing either. I mostly keep to myself, do my work, show up on time, and try not to stand out. That was the plan. Until everything shifted because of one moment in one classroom with one person. Her name is Miss Connors. She teaches modern American literature. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Always sharp, always composed. She wore fitted skirts and neutral blouses, never flashy. But her presence made the room quieter the second she stepped in. Her voice was low, controlled, and she never raised it. She didn't need to. I'd always watched her from the back row. Not in a creepy way, just curious. She moved with the kind of quiet confidence that made everyone sit straighter. Her fingers were always ink-stained from grading papers. She drank her coffee black and cold. She never smiled unless she meant it. That week, she returned our midterm essays. Mine came back with a red circle around the title and 2 words written next to it. See me. That was it. No grade. No comments. Just see me. After class, the room emptied quickly. I stayed seated, waiting for everyone else to leave. She didn't look at me until the last student stepped out and the door clicked shut behind him. Nathan, she said, finally meeting my eyes. Do you have a moment? I nodded and stood, walking slowly to her desk. The late afternoon sun angled through the tall windows, painting long bars of light across the floor. The classroom felt larger now and quieter. I could hear the hum of the old ceiling lights and the creak of the wood beneath our feet. She didn't sit. Instead, she leaned slightly against the edge of her desk, her arms crossed loosely, holding my paper. Her eyes scanned the first page again. This wasn't your voice, she said. It was safe, disconnected. I followed the structure you asked for, I said, trying not to sound defensive. She nodded. You did. But structure without soul is just empty. There's nothing here that tells me who you are. I swallowed. I didn't think that mattered. It does, she said, watching me closely. Especially in writing. Especially in literature. If you're not saying something real, then why say anything at all? I didn't answer. Her words landed harder than I expected. She paused, then tapped the corner of my paper with one finger. You ever write something you didn't turn in? I looked at her, caught off guard. What do you mean? A journal. A note. Something no one else saw but you. I hesitated. Maybe. Her expression didn't change, but her voice softened slightly. Bring me that version next time. My throat tightened a little. That version wouldn't get an A. She gave a small, knowing smile. I'm not asking for an A. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, intentional. I'll think about it, I said quietly. She nodded once. That's all I ask. I turned to leave, and just as my hand touched the doorknob, I heard her voice again. Nathan. I looked back. Next time, don't hide behind the words. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded once and stepped out into the hallway. But something about that sentence stayed with me, and I knew even then that I would be staying after class again. I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. Not just the words, but the way she said them. Calm, direct, like she already knew I was hiding something. Like she'd seen through the way I pretended to care only as much as I had to. And now I couldn't unread her note. I couldn't unhear her voice. The next time I walked into her classroom, something felt different. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was the way she glanced at me for just a second longer than usual. Or the way she lingered near my desk when handing out papers. I tried to act normal, but my skin prickled with awareness. That day's lesson was on Sylvia Plath. Voice, vulnerability. her words echoing off the walls as Miss Connors read lines aloud. The woman is perfected. Her dead body wears the smile of accomplishment. Her voice didn't shake. Mine did. After class, I waited until the last student left again. She didn't ask me to stay this time. I stayed anyway. She was at her desk, collecting folders, but I could tell she knew I was still there. Her movements slowed. I rewrote it, I said finally. She looked up. Your paper? She asked. I nodded and held it out. She didn't take it right away. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, glancing at the fading sky. I wasn't sure you would, she said. I shrugged. Neither was I. She finally turned back to me and walked slowly to the desk beside mine. Not her desk. A student's desk, just a few steps away from where I stood. Sit, she said. I obeyed. She sat across from me, not behind her usual desk. The space between us was maybe 2 feet, but it felt smaller. Closer. The classroom was quiet again. Golden light filled the room from the tall windows. Dust drifted lazily in the beams. She set the paper aside without opening it. Her eyes met mine. Why did you really rewrite it? She asked. I hesitated. Because you asked me to. She shook her head slowly. Try again. I looked away. Silence stretched, long and thin. And then, in that quiet, she moved. Her hands went to the collar of her blouse. I froze. She undid the top button. Just one. A simple motion. Not dramatic. Not suggestive. But deliberate. Her voice dropped slightly. Let's be honest. My chest tightened. I think, she continued, you're scared of being seen. In writing. In life. Everywhere. I swallowed hard. She leaned forward just a bit, elbows resting lightly on the desk. The open collar revealed just a little more of her collarbone, her neck. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing scandalous. But I felt the air shift between us. You're not the only one, she added quietly. My voice barely came out. What do you mean? Her gaze didn't waver. I teach because I believe in truth. But that doesn't mean I always live in it. We sat in silence again. But this time it was charged. Alive. Like the room was holding its breath. I didn't mean for this to get weird, I said, unsure of my own words. It's not weird, she said. It's honest. That's what makes people uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say. She finally sat back and tapped the paper with one finger. We'll read it next time. I nodded slowly. She stood. I did too. As I turned to go, she spoke again. Nathan. I paused. Her voice was steady. Don't censor yourself again. I kept coming back. I told myself it was about the essay, about the rewrite, about finishing the semester strong. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't the paper. It was her. The way she looked at me when no one else was around. The way the air shifted when we were alone. The way silence turned into something else entirely. Miss Connors didn't treat me differently during class. She didn't give me extra attention, didn't call on me more than anyone else. But there were moments, small ones, that stuck. A glance held 1 second too long. Pause before speaking. The soft brush of her hand when she passed my desk. Every time I stayed after class, the room felt less like school and more like something suspended in time. Like the rules outside didn't quite apply inside those walls. Like we were both waiting for something to break. One afternoon, I stayed even after she finished reading my rewritten essay. She didn't ask me to leave. She didn't look at the clock. Instead, she sat beside me again. Same seat, same closeness, same quiet. This version, she said, tapping the paper, felt like you were finally speaking. I said. It wasn't perfect, she added, but it was real. I nodded. That's what you wanted, right? She smiled faintly. That's what you needed. I wasn't sure if she meant the paper or something else. I leaned back slightly, my pulse steady but elevated. Can I ask you something? She turned toward me, her eyes calm. Of course. Why are you letting this happen? She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Letting what happen? She asked, though we both knew the answer. This, I said. Whatever this is. A long pause followed. Her gaze never left mine. Because, she said finally, I stopped pretending a long time ago. She reached up slowly and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her blouse was the same one she'd worn the day she first unbuttoned it. But now I noticed things I hadn't before. The way the fabric clung to the curve of her shoulder. The way her fingers rested on her lap when she didn't know what to do with them. She looked tired, and beautiful, and real. I spoke before I could stop myself. You don't have to be perfect, you know? Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I know, she said softly. Another pause. Then she asked, do you feel this too? Or am I imagining it? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to get it right. Yes, I said. I feel it. Every time I walk in here. She exhaled. Slowly. Her eyes dropped to her hands, then lifted again. I've crossed lines in my head, she whispered, but not out loud. I'm not asking you to, I said. I just don't want to keep lying. I'm not lying, she said. I'm holding the line because that's what I've been trained to do. But you don't want to, I said quietly. She stood then, not quickly, not to create distance, more like she needed to move. She walked to the front of the classroom, resting her hand lightly on the edge of her desk. Her back was to me now. I didn't speak. I waited. Then she turned around. I think about you, she said. 3 words. Nothing dramatic. No build-up. But they landed like thunder. I know I shouldn't, she added, her voice more fragile now. But I do. I stood up slowly, took a step toward her. Not too close. Just enough. I'm not just some kid, I said. I know, she replied. Another step. I'm here because I want to be, I said. I know. Her fingers brushed the edge of her desk again. Then she looked down at the floor. When she lifted her eyes, they were clearer, less guarded. If I let go of this, she said, everything changes. I nodded. Maybe it should, I said. We stood there in silence. The tension wasn't sharp anymore. It was heavy, dense, like the moment right before rain. She didn't reach for me. I didn't reach for her. But something between us shifted. Something irreversible. The next class was different. Nothing obvious. Nothing anyone else would have noticed. But I saw it. In the way she didn't look at me when she walked in. In the way her hands trembled slightly as she opened her folder. In the way she stuck exactly to the syllabus, her voice cool and practiced. Whatever we had stepped into, she was walking it back. And I didn't know whether to feel disappointed or relieved. After class, I stayed seated, waiting again. She pretended not to see me until the last student left. Then she gathered her notes and finally looked up. We can't meet after class anymore, she said without preamble. I nodded slowly. Okay. She stood there a second longer, searching my face for something. I read your latest draft, she added. It's good, honest, a little reckless, but real. That's what you asked for, I said. She gave a half smile. I didn't think you'd go that far. I didn't either. She leaned back against her desk, folding her arms loosely. Her eyes met mine, but they were guarded again. Professional, distant. I like being your teacher, Nathan, she said. And I don't want to stop being that. I never asked you to, I replied. She nodded once. But you could've. I won't, I said. Silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. You were right, she murmured. I don't want to hold the line, but I have to. I know. She looked toward the window, where the sky had darkened into early evening. The room was fading into shadows, lit only by the gold spill of the hallway lights through the glass door. If things were different, she began. I cut her off. But they're not. She exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. I'll write your final recommendation letter, she said, changing the subject. If you still want one. I do. Then we'll focus on that. I nodded, unsure if I should feel proud or defeated. She reached for my paper, the final one I had turned in, and held it up. This is your voice. Don't lose it. I won't. She handed it back to me. Our fingers touched just briefly and then didn't. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. I didn't look back. I never expected any of this, I said. Neither did I, she replied. And that was the truth. Not some dramatic ending. No promises. No final kiss. Just two people standing at the edge of something they weren't allowed to want. I walked out of the room with my heart beating like I'd left something behind. But in a way, I hadn't lost anything. Because for the first time in a long time, I had written something that mattered. And she had seen it. All of it.